right. We are here. We are here with prayer points, home ownership, and not way. And so, as we wait for a couple of people to come in, I just want to say a quick prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this moment. We thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for you allowing me to be a vessel to relay the message which you download to me, and I return and relay to those that you lead to this particular platform. So, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this lesson. Thank you for all of these keys. Thank you for the points. And I just ask that you just fill me with your presence and remove my presence as I speak. Okay, and so guys, we are actually here today to discuss none other than home ownership in 2025 and what that looks like. And so a lot of people are facing affordability. And so it doesn't matter where you go, what city you live in, across the board, affordability is one of those things that appears to be something that people are struggling with. And so when I was given the 10 points for selling your home or purchasing, a lot of different points came across. And so for the first, if you're selling your home, you're going to want to make sure that you are praying for, number one, the right buyer. So when you're praying for the right buyer, this means that you're not just wanting any buyer. So if your home comes with conditions, and especially if you're selling, this means that your property has already been built. This is not a new build. This is not something that's been customized to that particular buyer's liking, but instead that buyer is going to come and your house has to speak to them. And so this is very imperative for you to pray these prayer points for someone who is going to potentially buy your home. Secondly, when you're praying for the right buyer for your home, you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for not only for your home to speak to them, but for it to be a benefit and a favorable opportunity for them. Because you wouldn't want to ever be a part of something that's going to not be an asset to someone else's life. You want to be in you don't want to be a liability. You don't want it to be a liability. You want it to be an asset. So when you're praying for the right buyer, you're praying for your home, which in turn they're going to buy, to be an asset for them in their future. The second point is going to be no hindrances, for no hindrances during the selling phase. That includes your paperwork, that includes your closing dates, that includes your appraisals, your inspections, your repairs, all of these things to be timely. And so if you have ever sold a home, then you understand these aspects. But for those of you that don't know, the selling phase requires these different portions. So the paperwork, you have to have all of your paperwork aligned. So that means your deeds. That means any type of liens that are on the property. That also means any type of repairs or just undocumented things that may hold up or hinder the actual closing process. So when you have a closing date set for, that is the date that everyone is supposed to meet, and all deeds are going to be signed and transitioned over from one party to the other. But if there are any hindrances in that process, then you now see different aspects as problematic when you come to the closing table. And this a lot of times can cause people to walk away. Then their phase is going to go just as smooth. And so, hi. And so, with your paperwork, the paperwork, you're going to want to make sure that your balances that are owed are reflective of what your actual balance is. I can't stress it enough, guys. If you're already a homeowner, make sure you're paying attention to your actual mortgage statements, because we ran into this very problematic issue when we listed our property for sale. Our mortgage was bought out by another lender and they did not transfer the proper balance. And so then what happens is you have to have an affidavit driven up. Is 500. I don't know what that means, but you're more than welcome to donate to this platform. Hi, Brittany. And so when you're looking at the balances in your mortgage statements, you're going to want to make sure that you have accurate depictions of what you actually owe. Dissect it, and if you see anything off, make haste on that, because it's a long and drawn out phase. Hi, Logan. And so it's a long and drawn out phase in the process of you selling your home. And so you don't ever want your paperwork to be misaligned or to have discrepancies when you go to the closing table. So that's the importance of that. And then with the appraisals, you're going to want to make sure that your appraisal, you have an idea. Hi, Blue Velvet Dreams. You're going to want to make sure that your all of your aspects of your appraisal, you know the valuation of your property before you take it to the market, because a lot of times what you may depict your property as looking like, the market may say otherwise. So do your due diligence before you even hire your realtor. Look at the comps in your area. And for those of you that don't know what a comp is a comparison to one of the properties that have recently sold that is going to be similar to the house that you have or that you're located in. You're going to want to do research so that you have a realistic expectation of what it is that your home is valued at and what it's worth. So then you're going to also want to pray for the inspections to go well. And so when you're looking at the inspection aspect, this is the phase or the period of the purchasing phase or selling phase in your aspect of where your buyer is going to have the property inspected so that they can see all of the components that they see are adding up to what they're supposed to. So for example, if you have fresh paint, they're going to be looking for those that inspector is going to be looking to make sure you're not concealing any cracks, concealing any plumbing leaks. If you just had fresh paint in the bathroom, then they're going to want to make sure that there's not a moisture issue. Things like this, mold, mildew, all of these problematic areas, your roofing, your plumbing, your electrical, all of these different things are going to be what those inspectors are going to look like. So the repairs, if there are any repairs that need to be done, you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for that point, that those repairs can be done in a timely manner. So if you ever receive the buyer and that buyer, thank you so much, Mr. Cool Cat. If you ever have the repairs and you guys have agreed upon a certain amount of a concession or an incentive, you want those repairs to be done in a timely manner, because if you're supposed to go to the closing table and it says these things are supposed to be completed prior to that, then from England, oh, so nice. I love it. Thank you so much. Love from England. I love it. But those repairs need to be something that's going to be fixated in that timely manner, because if it gets to that closing table, that could cause problematic areas as well. The third point that you want to consider praying for when you're selling your home is going to be your closing costs and the fees that are associated with it. So when you go to the closing table, you as the seller don't have as many closing costs and fees that are going to be associated with this particular transaction. However, you are still going to have a closing cost. Your closing cost typically is going to be consistent of your realtor fees. So the fee that you decided to agree upon, no, Mr. Cool Cat, that is not what this platform is about. We are here to deliver timely words and messages from our Heavenly Father. So if that is going to be something that is going to cause you to lust, then please don't. But I do appreciate the compliment. And so the repairs and the closing costs. So those closing costs are going to be that agreed upon amount. No, you're not being rude at all. Not at all. But I just, like I said, this is we're just as a platform for holy things, so scriptural things. And so the closing costs and the fees associated with your agent are going to be, oh no, your apologies accepted. Not at all. I'm not offended by any means, but I just want to be clear. And so your closing costs are going to be what's going to be upfront given to your realtor in the transaction's completion. So once you go to the closing table, all documents are signed. They're going to receive that percentage of that which was agreed upon for them to actually become your realtor. And so then you have the other fees that may be associated. So certain fees such as miscellaneous fees could be actually taken into consideration, which would be property taxes that are unpaid. You could have other fees that would be unpaid, or just say like if it was a homeowner's claim, things like that. Those are fees or hidden things that could potentially come up, or the buyer could actually ask for something and then you guys agree to it. So if there are repairs that weren't completed or the time frame was going to push you over during the closing phase, What could happen is you give them an incentive, and at the closing table, they would just take home a check for that actual incentive. So that's called a seller's concession. So you on the seller's end would provide that seller's concession. So that's another fee to make sure that you're praying for, that everything aligns so that there is no discrepancy and you're able to move forward with that. The fourth thing that you're going to want to pray for, and possibly this should have been maybe the first point, but it's your agent. You want to make sure that you're praying for the agent that you're going to try to obtain when it is that process of you coming to the table. You've considered selling your home and now you're pretty certain that you want to move forward with that. You're going to want to make sure that the agent is actually going to be someone with a pure intention, a pure heart, and they have your best interest at heart at all times. So that means that they're going to go to bat for you. That means that they're going to stand up and they're going to advocate for you if there gets to be a tough or a tricky situation there. Do your research, do your homework, interview the agents, because this is not only something that's going to be life altering and changing. This is a financial aspect. This is something that is going to either break you or make you, because this is a business transaction. A lot of people don't consider purchasing a home as a business transaction, but it is. It is business. And a part of that business is making sure that you have the right agent to be able to move the property the way that you need it to be moved. And so in structuring that, make sure that you're praying for the agent. Make sure that your intentions are, that their intentions are pure, because you wouldn't ever want to have an agent that is not going to be hearing you. You wouldn't ever want to have a time where you have an agent that's not just going to represent you well. And so sometimes you have what's called a buyer and a seller's agent all in one. And what this means is you have an agent that represents both parties. I would say be very, very mindful of that, because when you receive someone like that, they are working both sides of the deal. And so when they're working both sides of the deal, you want to make sure that you're going to be benefited and that you're going to be covered properly. Because when you're not, then this could cause a problematic area. If they're only working one side and that side is not yours, if they're only working the buyer's side, say they came in with a higher percentage that they're going to, pardon me, one moment. My apologies, guys. And so you're going to want to make sure that you are being represented well from both sides, but not just partial. You don't want the agent to be partial. So make sure that you're praying for the agent and their pure intentions and their advocacy for their representation for you to be something that's going to be at the utmost level. The fifth thing that you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for is going to be timely confirmations. So those timely confirmations throughout the process of the showings of the home, of the ability for the home to sell well, and for things to be managed well. You're going to want to make sure that you are able to, excuse me one moment, guys. Got it?
Yeah, why you put your rings on? What happened?
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay. So pardon me. All right. And so the intentions, okay, the timely confirmations, you're going to want to make sure that those timely confirmations are actually throughout the process. You're going to have certain aspects that need to be reached. So during the showing phase, you're going to want to make sure that those confirmations and the delivery of the communication is there. So all of these confirmations, you don't ever want to have like miscommunication between you as the seller and then your agent and then the potential buyer. Because what could happen is if your agent is not representing you well, you have a showing schedule and now you're on site, but then they forgot to tell you that there was supposed to be a showing. There should always be a communication, a two-way street. They should be communicating to you if you have questions. They should be able to answer those questions. If you have something that you're supposed to be communicating to them, they should be following up with you. It should not be a one-way street where you're the only party that is reaching out to them, where you are the person that's doing the work, because that is why you hired them. And so, if ever a time comes where you feel like these confirmations aren't there, take it to our Heavenly Father in prayer and make sure that you are asking Him to guide you along through the process, because you wouldn't ever want to shortchange yourself by not listening to our Heavenly Father's confirmations. And then the sixth aspect is you want to make sure that you're praying for your new home. When you're praying for your new home, you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for something that's going to be willed and aligned with our Heavenly Father. Because a lot of times we get excited when we go and see these great, beautiful homes, but then we don't take into account or consideration everything that's going to come with this potential home. And so you want to always make sure you're praying for the type of home that you're going to be able to manage and steward well over. You wouldn't ever want to ask for something that's going to cause you to have um, you bite off more than what you can chew. And so in that aspect, make sure that you're praying for your new home. And then seventh, you're going to want to make sure that you have a smooth transition. So now you're out of the woods. You've prayed for the right buyer. You've had the right buyer. You've gone through the paperwork phase. So all of your documents align. You get an offer. You accept the offer. Now you're at the closing table. Well, you accept the offer. You have your appraisal. You have your inspection. Now you're at the closing table. Everything works out. The repairs were done. The concessions were exchanged. And now you're getting ready to transition into the new home that you have actually prayed for and that you have considered how well you can steward or manage. And so now when you get there, you're going to want to pray for that smooth transition into your new space. You don't ever want to take negative energy, or you don't ever want to take poor traumatic experiences to your new dwelling place. I can't stress this enough. If you have negative experiences with your previous home, leave that at the previous home. Matter of fact, don't even leave it at the previous home. You need to pray and just release that, because you wouldn't ever want someone else to come in and just pick up that same energy. Release that energy, pray about it, and move on. Expect for yourself to enjoy and embrace everything that our Heavenly Father has given you in your new home. It is supposed to be something that you enjoy. It is supposed to be a peaceful environment. It's supposed to be somewhere that you dwell well. It is supposed to be somewhere that makes others feel welcome if you are that type of person and you have people over. So pray for your new home. Eighth, you're going to pray for the abundance, because you don't ever want your home to be a liability, guys. And most people don't realize, when you purchase a home, if it is not a cash purchase, it is a liability. They don't tell you that, but it is. This is why the title of this live segment is Home Ownership Our Kingdom's Way, not the worldly way, because the world is going to tell you that it's an asset, that your home is an asset. Your home is not an asset unless you own it. You don't own it if you have a mortgage. A mortgage is an agreement for terms and conditions for a monthly premium that you are supposed to give them for a certain period of time. And so it's no different than your car loan, or just say a personal loan. You have agreed that you're going to borrow this money and that you're going to pay it back over the course of a period of time. And so the way the world sells this is you're going to immediately have an asset. That is not true. When you first take out a mortgage, you are going to have all of the fees that are going to be associated. So if you come and you're not prepared to pay your taxes on an annual basis, you have the option to roll that into what's called an escrow account. An escrow account is going to allow you to put a portion of your monthly payment that goes to your mortgage in a set account, and the mortgage company will then in turn pay your tax bill when that time is due. And so when you have that aspect of that safeguarding that, a lot of your money that you're paying each month is not going towards the principal. And then with the first, I think it's possibly around 5 or 6 years, the first 5 or 6 years, your principal's not going to be hit pretty much off the top, unless you're one of those conventional lenders, a conventional mortgage person that has chosen to put 20% down, which most people don't have these days, or you have a veterans loan, or you have 100% loan, or you have an FHA that did 3.5 or whatever the percentage is that's required to be down now. But your home is not going to be an asset off rip. Your asset comes when they say when you have equity, but it is still not considered an asset because you don't own it. What I mean by that is, if something were to happen and you've paid on time consecutively, let's say for the first 5 months of those 30 years, if something were to happen and you go within 120 days, they now have the ability to be able to come in and foreclose on your property. If it were your asset, they would not be able to do that. And so that's what I mean by safeguarding yourself and understanding what it means to have an actual home. And so for your new home, you're going to pray for the abundance. That's how we got to this part of the conversation. When you're praying for your abundance, pray for it to be something that is going to make you money and not just have money going out. So if you have a property that has, let's just say a pool house, you could utilize your home, and now that abundance is going to flow naturally through your home, because while you're not enjoying that pool house, you can be renting it out. You're going to be utilizing your land. Perhaps you have a green thumb. You could start a farm on your land if you have so much acreage. And so those are things to consider. What way can my home that I'm purchasing, that I know for the first 5 years are going to not balance out when I'm making this mortgage payment each month? I want a specific amount to be able to go towards my principal. So how can I make money off of that which I've been given in my home, an abundant transaction? And then the ninth prayer point is going to be prosperity. You want the wealth and riches and longevity, the peace, the happiness, the joy. All of these different aspects of your home should incorporate that prosperity aspect. And so when you're selling your home, you are praying for the smooth transition, the abundance in your new home, and the prosperity of your new home. You don't just want to go blindsided and pick it because it's cute, because you may get there and then you all of a sudden now you're pregnant and your family's expanding, or there may be an issue with a job and now you have to transfer and the commute is a little bit further than where you anticipated and when you first bought. All of these are realistic things that you should be considering as a seller, and then when you purchase again. And so the 10th thing is you're going to want to pray for the assignment, the clarity attached to the new chapter and your home. So when you're praying for the assignment, when you're praying for the things that are going to be attached to your home, are you going to be entertaining? Are you going to be evangelizing? Are you going to be welcoming over to new people? Are you going to be the neighborhood, we'll just say gathering spot for the kids in the neighborhood? I know with many of our homes, we have children. So one of the things that naturally fits is we are the go-to spot for the children to kind of come and hang out at. We have to consider these things, because if it's not a space that's only if it's a space that's only customized to fit our children and our needs, we're not welcoming the assignments that could be potentially associated and linked to our actual home. And so you don't ever want to not pray for the assignments that are going to go with your home as well. And so when you're doing that, you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for your assignment clarity attached to the new chapter and your home. And so these are 10 prayer points when you're selling your home. So now we're going to move forward to the other aspects. But before we move on, I want to make sure that we don't have any questions as it relates to all of these prayer points. So if you have questions, I will now open up the floor for you guys and wait a few minutes to see if you guys have any feedback. And then we'll move on to the next aspect of things to consider when you're buying a home versus selling. So do I have any type of and so just to run those back by prayer points you should consider is you're going to pray for the right buyer. You're going to pray for no hindrances during the selling phase of your home. Your paperwork be aligned, your closing dates to be aligned, your appraisals to be aligned, your inspections to be aligned, your repairs to be timely, your closing costs and fees to be manageable, and for it to be compensated on time. Your agent, before you even list your home, you're going to be praying for your agent and their intentions as a representation of you during this transaction. You're going to be praying for timely confirmations throughout this phase, so that if anything is off, you're receiving that download from our Heavenly Father, who desires for you to have the insight to know when something's off. 6, you're going to make sure that you're praying for your new home or your transitional space. And for that transition, that's number 7. You're going to pray for your smooth transition into your new space. You're also going to be praying for the abundance of your home. You're going to pray for the prosperity of your home. And you're going to be praying for the assignments and the clarity attached to your new chapter and your new home. And so, guys, that's a rundown of the prayer points that you should be considering when you're selling a home. Now we're looking at the things that you would consider when you are buying a home. And so those aspects are going to be affordability. Affordability, when you think about it, kingdom affordability and setting a budget and margins according to what is tangibly accessible, not that lied to for so much. So long, I'll say. For so long, we've been lied to, and it's caused a trap, which has trapped so many homeowners today. And what I mean by that is affordability in the world's way of home ownership has not been honestly brought to the forefront. And what I mean by that is when you go and you get pre-approved, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, you are going, and what you see is going to reflect your gross earnings. You shouldn't ever go and get pre-qualified with your gross earnings. And this is why. When you go and you get pre-qualified with your gross earnings, what's happening is you're looking at the affordability based off of things that you never see. So the tangible things that you actually get in hand is not going to equate to your gross. When taxes come out, when taxes have to be accounted for, when taxes are paid, that's going to be your net. After they deduct your taxes, that's going to be what you bring home. So when you get your pre-approval, the kingdom way says that you do it based off of your net, because that's not going to put you upside down. What's happening now in the market that we see now, the affordability has flip-flopped. So it's now more expensive to buy a home, yet people are still qualifying because of this simple fact. This simple fact of affordability requiring pre-approvals to give you the gross income versus the net. So when you look at it and you are purchasing a home utilizing your net versus your gross, you're setting yourself up, realistically speaking, to know how much you can handle, because you're not going to say, okay, well, I make $7,000 a month, but I only bring home 5,000. If you say you make 7,000, but you only bring home 5,000, you're going into that upside down already. So then they're telling you you can afford this much house based off of the 7,000, but you're only able to afford 5,000. So that's what I mean by you have to set boundaries and not fall for the traps that, the world teaches. And then you're going to stop pre-qualifying, like I said, off of your gross. This is a recipe for disaster. And so you're starting with just the deficit, and that will lead to other financial burdens down the line, such as if your property taxes go up. So we just talked about that a little bit ago with your escrows. Your escrows are, the accounts that if you have your taxes, your property taxes incorporated into an account, that's considered your escrow account. So if you go in upside down, if your property taxes were to increase, that means that your mortgage payment is also going to increase. You don't ever want a time where you can't make those payments that you've agreed to make. And so by safeguarding yourself this way, by looking at your net, you're going to in turn continue to turn that wheel and to receive the ability to not have that financial burden down the line. And then you're also saving yourself from slavery and liability to have to pay these things over and over repetitively. You're now borrowing, what is it called? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. You don't ever want to put yourself in that, where you're taking out loans to pay your mortgage or things like that. And so you're supposed to be trying to have that set. Remember, we just talked about that. So if you're setting yourself up and you are going with the intention of your home being an asset versus the liability, like we've been trained to become house poor or car poor, but in this segment we're talking about home ownership. So if you are training your mind and conditioning yourself to consider your home as an asset, you're not going to go in upside down. You're not going to want to go in that route. And instead, you're going to look at your home and want to transition for it to be an asset and freedom. And so the second point is going to be, you're going to want to make sure that you're praying for the location, guys. You pray for the location, and it is very, very imperative that you pray for your location, because when you're praying for your location, you're going to make sure that you are considering, is it compatible? Not just if it's compatible, but is it compatible with our heavenly assignments? What are you doing with your home? What will you be doing? What will he have you to do or steward well over while you're in your home? And so when you're considering these things, all of that is going to be a part of what you should be praying for when it comes to the location. Does it bring you closer to our Heavenly Father, or does it separate you or distance you from Him? These are things that you're going to want to do. And so when you're considering this, if you're commuting, is that commute going to cause you to have less family time? Is that commute going to put you closer to your family so you can cut down that commute time? All of these different things you should be considering. Is it evident that his presence rests there? That's heavy on that. Is it sin ridden? So you're looking at the location, you're looking at the town, you're looking at these different things, and you're going to want to see if our Heavenly Father's presence is resting there. And if it rests there, then you're good. But if not, is it sin ridden, or is it peaceful? Is it profitable, or is it poverty ridden? And then on top of that, what opportunities are visible? What opportunities are visible at the location that you're seeking when you're looking for your new home? You have to take these things into consideration. And then what opportunities are viable? What opportunities have been presented, but you see life being given from it? What type of things are fruitful in this location? That's another prayer point that you want to consider when you are actually considering buying a home. You also want to make sure, and I didn't write this down, but you need to make sure that you're purchasing with the right agent as well. It's the same as the world's way of giving you an agent and they're just being for themselves and being greedy. Or you have a representative of yourself in knowing what it is that you are looking for with your family, because this is an investment. We just talked about that. It's an investment. You want to make sure that your asset is being maintained. This business transaction is going to be something that you have to live with for 30 plus years, unless you get a 15-year mortgage. And so when you're doing that, you're making sure that your agent is in your corner, that your agent is for you and not just for themselves. Your agent should be communicating. Your agent should be advocating for you. Your agent should be listening when you say, I want a yard because I want kids, or I want a larger backyard because our kids in our last home, it wasn't big enough, or I want a home that's going to have enough yard for me to be able to do the upgrades that I want to do. And so make sure you're praying for your agent as well with the purchasing process. And then the third point is you're going to want to make sure that you are praying for the pros and the cons. You're outlining them and that you have clear sight. Because if you don't have sight, then it could cause you to a little bit. And you don't ever want to get to the point where you're wavering. So are being considered and you're praying for it. The new versus the old. What does that look like? How does this look? You're going to weigh those two options out. Homeowners association fees. That's something to consider when you're purchasing. Are you going to want to kick that out? Are you going to want to have someone that's on top of you with your actual missions and they're telling you how high your grass can be, what type of fencing you can put up, what type of doghouse you can get, if you're changing your door, what color door, what type of door, things like that. And so even down to your paint, I recall one community we lived in, we had an HOA, and it was like down to the paint. I remember one of our neighbors putting up a fence, and the fence was not in alignment with what they wanted as far as the color goes. It was like maybe a hair too high. They ended up making them take the fence down. And so consider those things. So homeowners association is something that is growing, something that is like a snowball effect these days. But at the same time, consider that. If you want neighbors and you want a homeowners association, then make sure that you understand everything that goes along with a homeowners association. You have fees that in turn, if it's going to be incorporated into your mortgage and put in that escrow, it could fluctuate. So if that fee goes up, your mortgage goes up. So it's just like we were talking about with the property taxes and the escrows. Consider those things. So the pros and the cons. So does it have a homeowners association? This reduces your freedom again. And oddly enough, it's a growing rampant thing that they are housing your money versus the communities that don't have HOAs. And so what you do see most of the time now is a community pop up and it has an HOA. So typically you're going to have to purchase something that was already pre-existing if you're going to see something without an HOA, because the demand is just not there. And so when you're looking at those fees versus no fees, homeowners association versus no homeowners association. So with the homeowners association, you know you're going to have those stringent rules and guidelines that you can and cannot, of things that you can and you cannot do. So beware of that. And so these are the things that are not talked about. And so guys, as I'm here, this is why I was led to do this live segment before I go and, record a video rectifying these same things and just kind of reiterating the same stuff, because so many believers are supposed to be doing things scripturally and they don't have that ability to be able to see it because they don't know. And so having gone through numerous owning homes, I just feel like this would be an appropriate time to share this information. So if you know someone that is getting ready to purchase or buy a home that's a believer, share this with them so that they have those prayer points and the things that they need to know and outline. Okay. And then number 4, what does your spirit feel? You need to be praying about what your spirit feels, because when you're buying a home, this is something that's not light, guys. Are you at peace there? Okay. You don't have to force the situation. When you'll know when your spirit feels right in that home, when you're there, don't force yourself, guys. Don't force yourself into something, because like I said, this is an investment. Once you sign that dotted line on your mortgage, on that agreement to do whatever you're going to do for however long you're going to do it, the terms and conditions, you're going to have to stick with that. That now is going to be your obligation. It's going to be your responsibility. So what does your spirit say when you are actually at that home and you're feeling like you're getting closer to the closing date? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel anxiety? Because that's not from our Heavenly Father. He's going to give you peace concerning it when it's meant for you to be it, when it's meant for it to be yours. And then nothing that's meant to be yours is going to have to be forced. You won't have to be manipulative. You won't have to lie. You won't have to sit here and try to make something that's not something. All of those different things you have to consider when you're purchasing your new home. And then it won't change. It won't change if you sign for this property that you feel all of these emotions. So remember that when you're weighing these pros and cons and you're examining what your spirit feels. All right. And so the fifth point is, would this particular home and its presence with me purchasing it, would it honor our Heavenly Father? Would it glorify the Most High? Would it do that? So if you purchase this, is it going to cause you to be, let's just say, house poor? Is it going to take all of your resources, or are you going to have enough to be able to be on the go if he calls you to something different? If he says, okay, well, I need you to just be able to go over here for a little bit, are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to do that? Because if you're not able to do that, then that's not glorifying and honor him. He's not going to ever ask you to do something that is going to require you to give all of who you are and not have something left over. And so asking yourself that question, would this purchase glorify and honor our Heavenly Father? Because you want it to be an asset in both the kingdom and here on earth. And so make sure you're doing that. And then the bonuses that I have, we'll reiterate those. So things to consider when you're buying, and the prayer points, the affordability. You want to make sure that it's affordable and that you're using, we're going to say it again, make sure that you're using your net versus your growth when you are doing your pre-qualification process. Do not go and pre-qualify for a home, guys, with your gross. You do not see the entirety of the gross amount of money that you are reflecting on your paycheck. You want to utilize that which you actually have and it gets transferred to your bank account that you see on your check and you cash out each week. You do not want to pre-qualify with gross amounts of money. You want and pre-qualify with your net. Okay, so be realistic about your affordability and pray about it. And then you also want to make sure that you're praying for your location. Pray for your location to be an asset and for it to be compatible with whatever he's assigning to you and the assignments that you're going through. Third, you're going to want to pray for the pros and the cons for it to be clear and concise. Make a list and go old school. Go old school and make a list. Write your stuff down. What would benefit you and what would hinder you? If the good outweighs the bad, then pray about it. Pray about it and say, okay, well, this is what I come up with. Am I missing anything? Is there something that I'm not seeing that you want to display and show me? Fourth, you're going to want to make sure that you know what your spirit is feeling in this aspect of your home ownership. What does it look like when you step foot or when you think about it? Does it make you anxious? Does it bring you peace? What does it look like? Because it's not going to change just because you sign on the dotted line and you move in. It's just going to intensify because now you're actually paying for something. So if you had anxiety for it, now you're living in a space where you have anxiety and you're paying to live there. It makes no sense. Just retract it, regroup, and go look at another home. It's that simple. You are not obligated if you have not signed any type of documents. You're looking. That is the process of you looking. Okay? That's why it's called a phase, the buying phase of a home. All right? Fifth, would this purchase honor and please, glorify, and uphold the principles relative to the Most High and our Heavenly Father? Does it? Okay, so those are the prayer points for the buying phase. All right, now we have a couple of bonus areas, and those bonus areas are as such. First off, if a new build, then you're going to want to make sure that you are requesting itemized comparisons and the price points of the homes and the materials, all of these aspects of the homes that are around. If you're buying a new build, you want to see how other homes that are similar to this home are priced. Because a lot of times when you look at new builds, especially if they are in cookie cutter communities, that's the communities that have the same type of house that are set up throughout the subdivision and it's no customizations or things like that, you're going to want to make sure that you're comparing the price. And you're going to want to do this for several reasons because the materials and the costs associated with building that house may be significantly less than what that commission is tacked up on it. So the home could have been maybe $250,000 to build, but then they tack a commissions fee of $250,000 and now it's priced at $450,000. But if someone comes in and they purchase that, then now it's saying, okay, well, I can actually get away with this. But you doing your due diligence could cause them to lower the price, or you have better room for negotiation if this is a home that you want to purchase. But like I said, with the buying phase and the considerate prayers, if this is something that's being brought to the forefront and it's revealed that there's manipulative practices like this, I would steer clear from it altogether because I don't like anything mixed up in it. Because everything that's developed and created comes and there's a spirit behind it. And so I would ask for those things. And if that comes up and it's a problematic area, then I would reconsider. Okay. And so the other aspects of what you're going to be requesting to see, you're going to want to compare the parcel. So your parcel is your layout of the land. Because if you decide that you may want to put a pool there, you may not be able to put a pool there based off of the parcel layout. And so you wouldn't ever want to go into this without looking at your parcel and examining your land. Survey your land. If you have the capacity to do that, ask for the survey of the land because it could be very well that these builders are putting your home on top of marshy ground, which could be problematic for your foundation. It could be that they're putting it in an area that has natural creeks or springs, which could potentially put you in a flood zone. Should that be the case, then now this is going to mean that your homeowner's insurance is going to require more than your average, more than what you were typically going to be required to have if it were just a surveyed land that said, hey, no creeks, no rivers, no streams, no marshy area. Okay. And so then the next aspect is going to be the comparisons, and then you negotiate. Don't be afraid to let your request be made known. You're going to examine your incentives because a lot of these new cookie cutter communities come with incentives. They are paying you to purchase the homes. So not only can you come in at a lower rate, but you can also request the incentives to come. So that can be something as simple as an allowance to decorate or upgrade the appliances, to pay the fees, those same realtor fees that we talked about in the very first portion of this segment. All of those aspects are something that can be requested and incorporated into your transaction and your deal. So make sure that you're examining those incentives because you don't want to leave money on the table. Don't settle. And I have an exclamation mark here. Do not settle. I don't care how cute it is. I don't care how much you just think you just must have it and it's just the only one out there. No, do not settle. Don't settle for that home. This is an investment, like I said. And Proverbs 31 reminds us that she considered the land before she bought it. So with her considering the land before she bought it, you know what that means? She was a wise woman because she considered all of the things that were going to be associated and attached to it. And so that's what you're going to want to make sure you're doing. And then with your pre-existing sales or your resales, things to consider when you're actually purchasing are the age of the home, guys. If the age of the home is more than 15 to 10, we'll just say 15 to 20 years old, consider the age of the home. There are not going to be, this home more than likely is not going to be something that is going to be structured like it is brand spanking new. Please don't do that. Don't go into a pre-existing home that's built in, the 30, 40 years ago and expect for it to look like a new build. That's just unrealistic in most situations and circumstances. And so look at your land in the pre-existing resale or the resale homes. You're going to look for things like erosion. You're going to look for just water runoff and things like that, because that could be a problematic area as it relates to your foundation. And you don't ever want to get into a home that has foundation, plumbing, roof, or electrical issues, because those are all the most expensive and they are not covered by your homeowner's insurance. So this means, unless it's a natural disaster or something that takes place, if this can be proven that the home was already problematic within this area, they're not going to cover it. So you want to make sure you're examining with an older home the land, survey the land if you can, to make sure there are no foundational issues or components that could cause a flood zone or moisture within your land. And so you're looking for things like, how close is it to the creek? How close are the streams? When it rains, where does the water run? Things like that. And so you're looking at the plumbing aspects, because typically if there's a plumbing issue, then it's going to be a problematic area for the entire home. Because with a home that's older, they have typically settled. So what you don't typically see is like little hairline cracks and things like that, because the home has had time to settle. It has, gone through seasons of life. And so your electrical issues, you want to look for those types of things, like flickering lights, or things where you turn on a hall light but then it takes like an extensive amount of time for the next light to come on. You're going to want to look at things like that. And so as these things are the most expensive in the aspects of these types of problematic areas, they're not going to be covered by your insurance company if they were already pre-existing. So make sure that you're praying about these points. And then these are the areas that you should consider to be deal breakers. So if you're looking at an older home and you see electrical, land, runoff, creeks overflowing, and a lot of floods or different natural disasters happening within this area, that should be a deal breaker. And it should come with heavy incentives if you are still considering it in your favor as the buyer. So you have the ability as the buyer to make these incentives. Just like with the seller, we were telling you to consider the incentive request from the buyer to make the purchase process feasible for both parties. You're going to do the same thing as a buyer. You're going to want to make sure that you make these requests be made known. And so request the repairs, request the budget for the repairs. If they don't want to have it done before the actual closing, you can get a seller's concession. You can have a repair budget. And then with that budget, you go in and turn, redo the flooring, or all of those little minor details and repairs that you have discovered through your inspection phase. And so you're going to get several estimates. And this is how you do that. Hi, how are you? And so what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that these estimates are going to come with you're going to get the estimates from several different components. So when you're getting the estimates from several different agencies or entities, or, we'll just contractors at this point, you're going to make sure that you go with the highest. So when you go with the highest contractor, and I'm glad you are well. Thank you for joining me. Do you have any questions as it relates to home ownership, purchasing, or selling? That is what we're doing here tonight. And so when you're considering your estimate costs, by getting more than one estimate and being able to go with the highest estimate or the median of all of the estimates combined, what you're going to do is allow yourself a good portion of your budget to be requested from that seller in a pre-existing home, because you don't ever want to pay for those repairs for something that you're coming into. So if you love that home that much, you're requesting that incentive at the closing table for them to cover your repairs for you to purchase that home if they're not going to rectify those things before closing. And so that's what that means when I say pray for your budget. Okay. And then the price of the insurance is another aspect that you want to pray for when you're considering purchasing the new home. Get those quotes, guys. I'm telling you, because it will be you will be mind blown as to how different a quote can be just by you going with a whole different agency. I mean, I've seen $2,000 and $3,000 differences getting quotes, and so you're going to want to make sure that you are getting those price quotes, the valuation checks. Get the valuation check of your property as it is kind of assessed by your insurance agency. Because if you go in and you say that your house is worth something, or the appraisal says it's worth this, but then the insurance company is only writing it off as being this much, or making that necessary step to say, oh, well, we're considering the fact that if we have to rebuild this ground up, if a disaster happens, for it to be 50 grand more than what you've been appraised for, we have a problem, because when I had to pay for this home, that's not what they said. And so make sure that you're doing your homework. It's just like with a vehicle purchase. You always want to make sure that you get a quote for the insurance and your taxes. That was not something that was talked about, but make sure that with a pre-existing, you examine the taxes. How do the taxes increase over the course of so many years? We'll just say just 5. 5 should be a good standing point. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it fluctuating? A fluctuating tax bracket means that there could be a lot of turnovers. There could be a lot of resales in the area. And then a steady climb means that you have a lot of valuation or equity, which means more than likely, if you have your escrows incorporated into your mortgage account, you're going to see a spike in your actual mortgage statement once you actually step foot and start to reside in that home. So get those quotes for the insurance and the valuation check. See if there are any claims that have been filed on the pre-existing home as well. Because if there have been plumbing issues, roofing, electrical, fire, any of that have taken place, those claims have been filed with an insurance agency. So by them being filed with the insurance agency, what you're going to be allowed to see is the cost of the damages, what types of damages, and you can now request that because you have the intention of purchasing this property. And so by you doing that, you're safeguarding yourself, because if they say, oh, we had all these things rectified, but then you see that there was never a deductible met, and so they just pocketed the money and never did the repairs and just patched things up themselves, you're saving yourself that trouble. And so just make sure that you're doing those things. And so if it was in reference to, like I said, any of those pricey areas, you're going to want to stay away from. So that's your roofing, your electrical, foundation, or plumbing. Any of those things that have to kind of be messed with, I would say steer clear from it unless you're an investor. And so, like I said, if there are indicators of projects, don't show up, guys, with the intention of selling that purchase, that the buyer, the seller, selling the seller short. Because if you know that there are projects visible when you're going to see us showing, for a showing to this home that is pre-existing, it's not going to be in perfect condition, guys. Let's just be realistic about it. Don't be condescending with the negative comments, and that that's going to impact your character. So you don't ever want to go in and talk down on someone's dwelling place. You don't know what they had to go through. You don't know what experiences, hardships, financial woes, and things like that someone may have gone through in listing their home, or even just the reason behind listing their home. So be sensitive to those things. And if there are indicators of projects and they were honest with you about these projects needing to be done, don't go in and try to lowball the seller of the home. That's just like unrealistic, guys. Just don't go in and try to lowball. If you're not interested in the property, keep it moving. Keep it moving. Be kind, and then give them feedback. Give them feedback as to why you chose not to. Maybe this is something that they did have a budget to be able to repair, or just give a stipend for. It's as simple as having a conversation, but not with a condescending tone. You don't ever want to go into someone's dwelling and do that. And so consider it is not a new home. Just consider the fact that it's not a new home, and moving forward, you're purchasing this resale for one, probably because you got a good deal on it. The compensation is going to require less of you than if you were to go and do a new build or a custom home. Point blank, period. So that's one up that they have on you. So consider that it is not a new home and go in with a realistic expectation. Consider also that it has been lived in. So while you're going through the showing phase of this home and the purchasing process, know that if it's a owner occupied home, people are living there. So you can't expect for things to look clean. If you go in and there's a laundry basket and it's full of laundry, people live there. And you requested a showing 2 hours or 30 minutes within that time span, and they've allowed you to come in and disrupt their natural routine. Be considering and be mindful of that if you're purchasing a pre-existing or you're interested in purchasing a resale or a pre-existing property. Also, you're going to want to consider everyone maintains their homes differently, guys. So what you may think is squeaky clean may not at all be clean to someone else. So just be mindful of those different things and different attributes that we all have across the board. Everyone maintains their home differently. So when you go showing for a pre-existing home, like I said, rule of thumb, don't be condescending in tone, don't make rude remarks, and don't try to shortchange someone because they have a project. Just know that everyone maintains their home different, and there are reasons behind how effective they are or how ineffective they are at maintaining that home. Then you're going to also want to not be insulting in front of the homeowner. So if you do have something that requires you guys to communicate, which there's very rare circumstances and occasions that you will, you're going to definitely want to, you still want to, you saw something that was an interest. Hi, how are you? And so you're going to want to make sure that you're interested. You saw something and it was an interest. It was an interest of yours to go and view that actual home. And so making that application of our kingdom principles, you want to make sure that you're kind-hearted. You want to make sure that you're polite. You want to make sure that you're not condescending in tone again. And so be polite. This is someone's home, and you don't ever want to make them feel like their home is just crap. That's just not what we do as believers and having pure hearts. And then you're going to also want to remember that you could make this space your own when you're looking at purchasing a resale. And so if you're considering purchasing a resale, you have to look at the space as if you are going to come in and you're going to make it your own. That's what you're supposed to be doing. What you desire, it will not remain in the same condition as when you're viewing it, because that person's things are going to be moved out and you're going to come in and make it your dwelling place. So don't be crappy about the unrealistic expectations of seeing your stuff in there with someone else's stuff in there, if that makes sense. And so you don't come in and you don't just stage a room that already has things in it. You take the things out or you move things out that you dislike, and then you replace them with the items that you do. It's no different when you're purchasing a resale or a pre-existing home. You're going to make that space your own. So consider that instead of going in with unrealistic expectations, thinking that the pre-existing home is going to be set up to woo you. People have different tastes. So if you're a modern person and you're going and looking at someone's home that has a country decor, it's not going to resonate well with you, but you have to do your due diligence and have your imagination set forth for you to see and visualize yourself in that space. Okay. And then you're going to want to state the same as you're stating when you're viewing this home. You're going to want to make sure that you're considering the personalized touches that you can contribute to this space as well. And so then the next point to consider is that paint and flooring are cosmetic. Paint, flooring, things like that, changing out a door, they're all cosmetic and things that can kind of be, you can switch those things out. One thing that you cannot switch out is the location of the home, is the layout of the home, unless you're an investor and you just want to buy this land for the actual valuation of the property or to transition it into something else. You're going to want to be mindful and considerate of that. This property location does not change. So if you're going in it with the idea of anticipating that town growing or things like that, think long and hard, because they may have something in the works, but then all of a sudden they decide to go against that. I know there was a community before that was supposed to have amenities, and they still don't have the amenities. They ended up having amenities shared with like another community that was up the road. And so now it's overpopulated. So don't fall victim to seeing things in a pre-existing sale for something that is to come. Go off of what you already see. Go off of what's visible. Okay. And so the location is not a deal breaker. It may not be a deal breaker, but it could be a deal breaker based off of what you see and what you interpret. But paint, flooring, and like doors, things like that, you can always change that stuff out. And so then you're going to want to consider that with a resale, you can paint, you can fix a step or simple appliances and things like that. Don't lose out on a good deal of a pre-existing home versus a new home that's going to cost you more. You can have a budget of $10,000 versus you getting that home that's brand spanking new that was not built properly or poorly built, and now you're over your budget by $2,000, $200,000. So you don't want to do that. Don't do that. Don't lose out on a deal due to being overly picky. Okay, and so Psalm 127:1 was where I was led with this particular portion of the message. So let's go there. For those of you that are new here, we're going to ask you to actually pull out your word so that we can read this together. And we're on the book of Psalms 127 and verse 1. Psalm 127, verse 1. And it reads, except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain and that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Okay, so when you're considering these things, look at where this house was built. Look at the area, like I said, the location. You're going to want to see, is it viable? Is it producing fruit? Is it producing good fruit? Because you don't ever want to put yourself in the midst of chaos. So consider these things. And then lastly, remember that this is a business transaction. Enough. You purchasing a home is not just something to be taken lightly. You're going to want to make sure that you are considering this business transaction as what it is. It's a transaction. This is something that's supposed to transition into an asset if you're not paying cash. So if you're getting a mortgage, this should transition into an asset. It should be something that's an abundant, prosperous moment, an asset. So if it's not going to become that, then don't do it, because that's not going to come from our Heavenly Father. He doesn't desire for you to have liabilities and not be able to profit. That's not what he wants. He wants your home to be a nice dwelling place with an invitation, with assignments that he can send you for it to be something that still glorifies his kingdom and that you can still get honored and favor from. All right. So it's a business transaction and you need to do what's best for you. But remember that the seller has needs too. I'm going to stress that again. Be considerate and be mindful that the seller has needs too. Just like you're looking for the right home, they are also looking for the right buyer. So when you consider these things, you're not trying to lowball. You're not just out to look for the best interest of yourself. I say, we just considered removing our listing today because we want the right buyer to purchase our home. We don't want just any buyer. We know that we want whoever gets our home to have the ability to turn it into the canvas that they want it to be. And so consider those things. You're going to have to remember that the seller has needs as well. The seller has needs, and they have debts that could potentially need to be paid. They may have medical debts. They have to pay off the mortgage, because people don't realize if you still have a pre-existing mortgage, that means when you sell your home, when you're selling your home, the mortgage company gets the first chunk. That's what that means. Then, if they've set aside agreements as to other debts being paid, that's who in turn is going to get the rest of the trickle down. And then if they're transitioning into a new home, depending on the size of their family, the affordability, what they have saved, what they've invested into this home, if they don't get that back, all of this is factored into that sale of the property. So consider those things. Consider that the seller has needs too. And so the budget, all of those fees that we just talked about in the first portion of this segment, you're going to want to consider those things for the seller as well. He or she is going to have realtor fees as well. All of those fees are going to still be associated. And if they have taxes that had to be paid that were back owed, that's going to come out of that actual end of the net proceeds. And so all of this is to be considered when you're considering buying a home. And so I can't stress enough doing things the kingdom way, because a lot of times people don't realize that the ways of the world have actually been adopted from scriptural principles, such as if you don't have the ability to pay your mortgage within 7 years, now that debt is supposed to be forgiven. That is what you call foreclosure and the waiting period. And so all of these different principles have been incorporated, but most people just don't know, especially the believers. And that is why I'm here to communicate this message, to relay the information that I have been given knowledge about, to share and in turn propel the kingdom of heaven forward in their purchases, and knowing and not being ignorant and going out into the market to purchase a home or to sell a home and not know what things to consider. So that is why we're here. And at this time, I'm going to actually get ready to wrap it up. So if you guys have questions, drop them in the comments, and I will wait for a few minutes to see if we have any questions or any type of feedback. I would love to be able to help you guys with any questions or the portions that you may have concerning home ownership. And if not, then we are going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I will let you guys enjoy the remainder of your night. And as always, I'm grateful for each of you who've taken the time to sit on this particular platform with me to receive the messages that I receive, and I in turn relay to you guys. And so, as always, I pray for nothing but the best of success with you guys. And for those of you that are going through the process, as am I, with transitioning from one space to another. So, we've gone through a pretty tough season with our current home, and we just kind of want to make sure that we are using our testament and our platforms to be able to educate others in their purchasing process. So if you have questions regarding how to purchase, or questions regarding how you're supposed to list your home or how to sell, or what things to consider, what aspects you need to look for, or things to pay attention to during the purchasing or the selling phase, please reach out to me via the link in my bio, and I would be more than happy to assist you with that, to connect you to some great agents that I am in contact with. It would be I would be more than, like I said, happy to help you guys with that, and using my gift and my knowledge, my wisdom concerning this matter. So otherwise, guys, I'm super excited for you guys during your journey, and just know that you should pray about it all. Pray about it all and wait for those confirmations. Don't do anything abruptly. Never move unless you're told to move. Like, don't do it. Don't step outside because it's all glitzy and glammy, because this is a big thing to consider. It is not something that's going to be taken lightly. It is not going to be something that just kind of goes away because you don't like it. You can't exchange it. It's not you don't have a receipt so you can just take it back and just wham. Hey, I really ain't feeling this. No, you have to go through the whole process all over again. And then you also have certain aspects within reselling a home within the first, I think, 2 years, depending upon what type of loan you have. You're going to have to consider all of that. So you have to remain there at least for about 2 years, or you have double taxation. So you now have to pay 20% on top of the taxes that you would have been paying for just the net proceeds, which is what you're going to pocket from the proceeds of your sale. So don't ever just do something just to do it. Don't make a risky decision. Don't go and just do something because you see others doing it, or you're being told to and you're not feeling right about it. Go with your gut feeling, go with your intuition, and as always, take it back to our Heavenly Father first and foremost, and pray for His clarity, pray for His discernment, pray for His insight, pray for His wisdom and understanding concerning all of these different areas. And so, guys, with that, I am actually going to wrap it up, and I am going to say good night to you guys. I pray that all is well with each of you, and I look forward to the next message, guys. All right, take care.